Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, we invite you into a world of shadows, secrets, and moonlit danger. Beneath the ancient, cracked Moonlight Bridge, a mystery waits in silence, one that only the brilliant mind of Hercule Poirot can unravel. Settle into a comfortable place. Let your imagination wander and allow the night's calm to draw you deeper into the story. Every whisper matters, every clue counts, and every moment brings us closer to the truth hidden beneath the bridge. Thank you for joining us. Let the mystery begin. Chapter 1. The scream beneath the bridge. Moonlight in the village of Hymir was not always gentle. Sometimes when the night was too still and the air too cold, the moon seemed to fracture into sharp silver shards that cut across the river like broken glass. The old Moonlight Bridge, arched, ancient, and heavy with ivy, sat poised above those shifting reflections. It had stood for nearly 2 centuries, with cracks veining its stone surface like old scars. On this night, the villagers said the moon looked cracked too, as though it mirrored the condition of the bridge below. And under that eerie glow came the scream. It rang out shortly after 10:30, long, sharp, echoing beneath the arch until the water swallowed its tail. Several villagers heard it. Only one had the courage to run toward the sound, and that was how the body was found. Poirot arrives in Hymir hours later. A motorcar hummed quietly along Hymir's narrow roads. Hercule Poirot sat inside, hands folded, the polished tips of his shoes angled precisely. His mustaches, immaculate as always, twitched slightly whenever the car hit a bump. The local constable at the wheel kept glancing at him nervously. "Nearly there, sir. Just down this lane." Poirot nodded with dignified calm. "My friend, do not distress yourself. A crime is like a badly knitted jumper. One finds the loose thread, one follows it carefully, and voila, everything becomes clear." The constable forced a laugh. "Well, it's a strange one, sir. Stranger than anything we've had." "They are always strange," Poirot said softly. "It is why Poirot is summoned." The car slowed near a cluster of trees where a lamp hung from a bent post. Beyond them, the river shimmered with moonlight, broken and trembling as if disturbed. Constable Reeves stepped out first. Poirot followed, adjusting his hat. "The body is just under the bridge, sir. A young man spotted it when he was walking home." Poirot raised a brow. "At night? Alone?" Reeves swallowed. "Yes, sir. Said he heard someone scream, came running, and found, well, you'll see." The scene beneath the cracked Moonlight Bridge. A group of villagers huddled near the bridge, whispering. They stepped aside as Poirot approached, some gasping softly in recognition. Under the arch, lanterns cast warm light onto cold stone. The air smelled of moss and river water. The ground was damp. And there lay the body, a man in his late 30s, well-dressed, his coat torn at the shoulder. His head was angled unnaturally, eyes half open. The moonlight filtering through the cracked stones above fell across his face like splintered light. Poirot did not move closer immediately. He observed from a few steps away, letting his eyes travel the scene from left to right, then back again. Constable Reeves knelt near the corpse. "Name's Leonard Harcourt, banker, well known round here. stayed at the Hymir in these past weeks?" Poirot murmured. "Bankers do not scream in the night unless something is very wrong." Reeves nodded. "We believe he fell." Poirot's eyes sharpened. "Fell? From the bridge?" "We think so. Stones are old, cracked, might have slipped." Poirot stepped forward at last, kneeling gracefully, careful not to disturb anything. "No, my friend. A fall from above would bruise, yes. Scratch, yes. But this," he pointed delicately at the victim's neck, "this is no wound of accident. This is strangulation. A precise, deliberate constriction. A killer's mark." The villagers gasped. Reeves blanched. "Murder. Under the bridge?" Poirot stood. "Yes, and not a simple murder. This man was attacked, dragged, and posed." He pointed with his cane. "See the scrape on the stones? Fresh. The mud transfer on his shoes. From the riverbank. And the angle of his legs? They were arranged tidied even." Reeves stared. "Why?" Poirot's mustaches lifted slightly. "For symbolism, perhaps. Or guilt, or drama. Killers can be surprisingly artistic." "Constable." The first clue. Poirot surveyed the stones above. "Constable, fetch me your lantern." Reeves handed it over. Poirot lifted the light, angling it beneath the bridge roof. Several villagers craned their necks, but Poirot alone saw what he sought, a faint smear reddish, high up on the cracked stonework. "A fingerprint," Poirot whispered. "And blood." Reeves gasped. "From the victim?" Poirot shook his head. "No, from the killer." "The height. The smear direction. It appears the murderer steadied himself, perhaps lost balance during the struggle." He handed the lantern back. "And note, Constable, the victim's coat is torn at the shoulder. This suggests not falling, but grappling. A fight. Short, frantic, and very recent." Reeves glanced around, suddenly uneasy. "Meaning?" "The killer might still be nearby." Poirot nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "Yes, but tell me, who discovered the body?" "A lad named Thomas Braywood. Lives by the old mill." "Where is he now?" Reeves gestured toward a thin, pale young man sitting on a crate, shivering under a blanket. "Bring him," Poirot said gently. The witness Thomas approached nervously, eyes wide. "Sir, I didn't do nothing." "I swear it." Poirot smiled kindly. "My boy, Poirot is not here to accuse the innocent, only to observe the truth." Thomas nodded quickly. Poirot asked, "Tell me, what did you see?" Thomas wrung his hands. "I heard a scream, sir. Loud, then something like footsteps. Fast ones, running." Poirot leaned in. "From which direction?" "The far side of the bridge, sir. The path that leads to the woods." Poirot's interest sharpened. "And did you see anyone?" Thomas swallowed. "I think. Yes. A shape, running, tall, wearing something long. Like a coat. But it was dark, sir." "Hard to tell." Poirot nodded. "And what of the scream? Could you tell if it was a man or woman?" "A man, sir." Poirot looked back at the body. "Then our victim screamed before he died, and the killer fled immediately after." He turned to Reeves. "Constable, we must preserve the woods path immediately." Reeves stiffened. You think the murderer ran that way? Poirot answered quietly. The murderer ran somewhere. And footprints, my friend, are like signatures. They never lie. The second clue as Poirot turned to leave the arch. Something glinted at the edge of the lantern light. A silver button, small, circular, engraved with a crest. Poirot lifted it carefully with his handkerchief. Aha! A button torn from the coat of a person of status. Not Harcourt, his buttons are intact. He slipped it into an envelope. The killer left this behind. Reeves stared, trembling slightly. What now, sir? Poirot turned toward the cracked moonlight above them, his expression grave, thoughtful, and entirely certain. Now, Constable, we begin the hunt. Chapter 2. Shadows on the river path. The villagers dispersed slowly, murmuring among themselves as the lanterns around the Moonlight Bridge flickered in the midnight breeze. Poirot remained still for several moments, listening not to the people, but to the quiet around them. The river whispered. The wind rustled through the ivy. Somewhere in the distance a dog barked once, then fell silent. Constable Reeves cleared his throat. Sir, you want to head to the woods path now? Poirot turned toward him. Before the dew settles, Constable. Footprints in the dirt are like confessions, beautifully clear when fresh, but easily lost to nature. Reeves nodded firmly and signaled to the two available patrolmen. Poirot walked ahead, cane tapping lightly, the silver button resting safely in his pocket. The village lanterns grew dim behind them as they approached the narrow path leading into the woods. Moonlight fractured across the stone bridge and across the riverbanks, creating a shimmering glow that matched the cracked silver reflecting from above. The air seemed colder here, though night was not yet deep. Constable, Poirot murmured, tell me about Monsieur Harcourt. Reeves exhaled softly. He was a banker. Stayed at the Highmere Inn for business. Or so he said. Poirot's brow lifted. So he said. Reeves swallowed. There were rumors, sir. People said he was in trouble. Quiet trouble. The sort that makes a man walk alone late at night. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. And trouble, Constable, is always a friend to murder. Footprints in the dirt. They reached the start of the woodland path. Trees arched overhead like cathedral pillars, their leaves whispering softly. Poirot knelt. Lantern. Please. Reeves handed it over. The ground near the entrance showed clear prints, fresh, deep, spaced far apart. Poirot traced the air above them with his fingertips. Running, he whispered, and running with urgency. The constable examined them. Those must be the killer's tracks. Poirot tilted his head. Perhaps. Or perhaps they belong to the one who discovered the body. The shapes are similar. He moved further down the path, studying carefully. Ah, but here is a difference. He pointed to a deeper, sharper print. A man with weight and height beyond our young witness. Notice the depth. Notice the slant. This man favored his left leg. Reeves frowned. You can tell all that. From just that? Poirot's mustaches twitched. My friend, footprints speak if one listens. Even the shoes tell a story. He crouched lower. These shoes have worn edges indicating much walking. The soles are unevenly worn on the outside. And observe, he lifted a fragment of dried mud from one print. This soil is from the riverbank, meaning our runner came from below the bridge, not the village. Reeves stiffened. The killer was down there before the scream? Poirot nodded slowly. Yes, which means this was not a sudden act of passion. This killer waited. And waiting implies intent. A broken branch, a broken story 50 yards deeper into the woods path. Poirot stopped abruptly. A broken branch lay across the ground, snapped cleanly. Poirot examined it with care. A struggle occurred here. Reeves blinked. Between who? Poirot pointed. Look at the ground. The soil is disturbed. 2 sets of tracks, one firm, one uneven. Someone was pulled or pushed in this direction. Reeves scratched his chin. Could it be the killer in Harcourt? Poirot shook his head. No. Our victim died under the bridge. These prints lead away. Someone else ran this path earlier, perhaps hours before the murder. Reeves looked startled. Then, this path holds more than one secret tonight. Poirot smiled grimly. Exactly. The woman by the lantern. A rustling noise snapped their attention forward. Poirot raised a hand. Someone approaches. A moment later, a woman stepped into the lantern glow mid-30s. Elegant coat, hair pinned neatly but slightly disheveled. Her eyes were red, as though she had been crying. Reeves stiffened. Miss Evelyn Harcourt. Poirot noted the shared surname instantly. Family of the victim? She nodded quickly, fighting to keep composure. Leonard was my brother. I came as soon as I heard. Constable Reeves sent word. Poirot bowed gently. My deepest sympathies, mademoiselle. Evelyn swallowed. They said you were investigating. Please, Monsieur Poirot, I must know what happened to him. Why would anyone harm him? Poirot studied her face carefully, not coldly, but analytically. Mademoiselle, were you expecting him tonight? Her eyes flickered. No, he said he had business. But when I sent a note to the inn earlier, they said he had stepped out. She paused, wringing her hands. He didn't say with whom. Poirot's gaze sharpened. But he did leave to meet someone. Yes. Poirot exchanged a quick glance with Reeves. Then this, mademoiselle, is no ordinary murder. Your brother walked beneath the cracked bridge to meet another person, and met death instead. Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes, but she steadied herself. Please, tell me what I can do to help. Poirot nodded. You may answer a question. Did your brother have enemies? Evelyn hesitated. He had. Disagreements. With his employer. With a business rival. And, she faltered. And with a woman he once courted. Poirot's eyebrows lifted. Her name? Clara Whitcomb. Poirot, mentally, placed the name among his growing list of threads. Merci, mademoiselle. You have been helpful. A sharp gust of wind rushed through the trees, extinguishing one of the lanterns. The remaining flame flickered violently. Poirot looked up toward the path ahead. Come, constable. The river is calling. It has more secrets to reveal. The lost glove. As they moved deeper, Reeves tripped over something soft in the leaves. What's this? Poirot knelt instantly. A glove, dark leather, fine quality, wet at the fingertips. Torn at one seam, Poirot held it delicately. This constable belonged not to our victim, but to a person who fought recently. See the scratch marks? The tear? The dampness? Reeves inhaled sharply. The killer dropped it. Poirot shook his head. No, the killer would not be so careless. He stood, holding the glove against the moonlight. This, my friend, is the glove of a third person. Reeves stared. Speechless. You mean? There was someone else here tonight, besides Harcourt and the killer. Poirot turned slowly, eyes narrowing as the fractured moonlight filtered through the branches. Yes, someone fled through these woods. Someone ran hard enough to lose a glove. Someone who may know the truth. He tucked the glove into his coat, and that someone is alive, frightened. And close. 3 paths, 1 murder at a fork in the trail. Poirot stopped. 3 distinct paths branched, one leading deeper into the woods, one curving toward the river, one heading back to the village. Poirot examined each in silence. Reeves waited nervously. Well, sir, which way? Poirot tapped his cane thoughtfully. The murderer took the river path. The innocent witness returned to the village. But the third person, the silent runner, took the deeper woods trail. Reeves blinked. And how do you know that? Poirot smiled softly. Because the soil tells me so. He pointed. Observe the scatter of dirt, the direction of the broken twigs, the speed of the steps. Someone ran with desperation, fear, not guilt. A guilty man runs carefully, constable. A frightened one runs blindly. Reeves shivered. So where do we go? Poirot turned toward the darkest path, into the woods, to find the person whose story holds the missing piece. He looked back toward the bridge, where the cracked moonlight shimmered on the water. For a murder done beneath fractured moonlight, Poirot murmured, cannot lose its secrets to the night. Chapter 3. The woman on the hill morning came slowly to Hymir, as if the village itself were reluctant to wake after the night's events. A thin mist lay over the river, and the cracked stones of Moonlight Bridge looked almost innocent in the pale light of dawn. Hercule Poirot sat at a small table in the Hymir Inn. A perfectly arranged breakfast before him, eggs, toast, a modest pot of jam, and coffee poured precisely 3/4 full. He had barely touched any of it. His eyes rested on the glove and the silver button lying on a folded napkin beside his plate. 2 small things, he murmured, and yet they speak of big troubles. A soft knock sounded at the door of his private dining room. Enter. Poirot called. Constable Reeves stepped in, hat in hand, eyes shadowed with lack of sleep. Morning, sir. Thought I'd give you an early update. Bon, sit, constable. You look as though you have wrestled with the night and lost. Reeves managed a weak smile and lowered himself into the chair opposite Poirot. We've confirmed Leonard Harcourt's identity with the bank headquarters. And you were right, there are complications. Financial ones? Poirot asked. Deep ones. Apparently, Harcourt had been under quiet investigation. Missing funds. Questionable transfers. Nothing proved yet, but enough to make enemies. Poirot nodded slowly. and enemies, Constable, are the seeds from which murder grows. He tapped the silver button with one finger. Tell me, what crest is this? Reeves cleared his throat. That's the Whitcomb family crest. Old money in these parts. They own half the land around Highmere, including the hill above the river. Whitcomb, Poirot repeated, recalling the name Evelyn had spoken. And the woman? Clara Whitcomb? Daughter of Lord Whitcomb, Reeves said. She and Harcourt had a history. Poirot's eyes gleamed faintly. Mais oui. A broken romance. A banker in trouble. A village with long memories. It becomes more interesting, does it not? He folded his napkin neatly. Come, Constable. You will introduce me to the Whitcombs. They walked up the hill road as the village stirred awake. Doors opened, smoke rose from chimneys, and whispers followed in Poirot's wake. That's him, isn't it? The famous one. The detective from London. What do you think he'll find? Poirot heard every word and cared for none. His mind was already at the top of the hill, at the house that watched the village from above. Whitcomb House. It stood large and quiet behind wrought iron gates, its stone facade softened by creeping ivy and time. An old place rooted in the landscape. The kind of house that collected secrets the way trees collected leaves. A maid answered the door, startled by their arrival but too well trained to show it fully. Reeves announced them, and within minutes they were shown into a sitting room with tall windows overlooking the river and bridge far below. A woman stood at one of those windows. Back to the room. She did not turn when they entered. Miss Clara Whitcomb? Poirot asked gently. Yes, came the reply. Her voice was controlled, but something brittle glinted beneath it. She turned slowly. She was in her early 30s, poised, composed. Her dark hair was pinned impeccably, her dress simple but clearly expensive. Her eyes, however, were tired. Too tired for the hour. You are Hercule Poirot, she said. I wondered when you'd arrive. Poirot inclined his head slightly. I am at your service, mademoiselle. She studied him. I suppose you're here to ask about Leonard. In part, Poirot said, but also about you. Her lips curved faintly, not in amusement, but in resignation. Of course. It always comes back to me. She sat, smoothing her skirt. Poirot remained standing for a moment, then took a chair opposite her. Reeves lingered near the door, notebook ready. Mademoiselle, Poirot began, you and Monsieur Harcourt were once, how shall we say, close. Her gaze drifted toward the window again. We were engaged, she said simply, for almost a year. And yet you are not Madame Harcourt, Poirot observed. No. A hint of steel entered her voice. I called off the engagement. For good reason. Poirot's eyes did not leave her face. May I ask that reason? Clara hesitated, fingers tightening slightly on the arm of the chair. He lied, she said at last. About money. About his position. About plans he made that involved my father's investments without my father's consent. When I confronted him, he said it was for our future. I chose not to have a future built on fraud. And your father? Poirot asked. Furious, she said. Not only with Leonard. but with me for having chosen him in the first place. The arrangement was convenient socially. The families aligned. Breaking it was messy. Poirot nodded slowly. So you resented him? I resented what he became, she replied. But I did not kill him, if that is what you're circling toward. Poirot smiled faintly. I circle not, mademoiselle. I move only where the little gray cells direct. He reached into his pocket and carefully placed the silver button on the low table between them. Tell me, he said softly, does this look familiar? Her breath caught. It was quick, almost imperceptible, but Poirot saw it. Her eyes fixed on the button, then flicked back to him. That is a Whitcomb crest, she said. From a riding coat, yours? Poirot asked. She shook her head. No, I stopped wearing that style years ago. And your father? Poirot inquired. He has them, she admitted, but he rarely rides these days. His joints don't allow it. And who does ride? Poirot asked. She hesitated. My cousin, Edward. He stays with us often. Father approves of him. He would have inherited everything if I had married into a lesser family. Ah, Poirot murmured. So your broken engagement cost him an easy path to fortune. Clara's jaw tightened slightly. You're suggesting Edward had something to do with this? Poirot said nothing. Silence, he knew, was sometimes louder than accusation. After a moment, Clara exhaled. Edward admired Leonard. At first, they spent time together when Leonard came here. Riding, hunting, planning investments. But when things went sour between my family and Leonard, Edward aligned himself with my father. He called Leonard a risk, a liability. And yet, Poirot said quietly, Leonard was here in Hymir again, in the same village, under the shadow of your home. Yes, she said. I did not expect that. When I saw him in the village 3 days ago, I was shocked. Poirot's eyes sharpened. You spoke to him? Only once, she said. On the road by the river. He said he wanted to make amends. To make things right. I told him it was too late. Her voice softened barely. He looked tired, Monsieur Poirot. Not just in the face. In the soul. Poirot regarded her carefully. And last night? He asked, where were you when Leonard Harcourt died beneath the bridge? In this house, she answered promptly. Having dinner with my father. Edward joined us later. We stayed in the drawing room until past 11. Can anyone confirm this? Reeves asked. My father, obviously, Clara replied. And the servants. And Edward. Poirot nodded thoughtfully. So many witnesses. It is convenient. Her eyes flashed. Are you saying my alibi is manufactured? I am saying nothing, Poirot replied mildly. Only that when a murder happens between the cracks of moonlight, every shadow must be examined, no? He rose smoothly. You have been very helpful, mademoiselle. One last question, if I may. Yes? Did Leonard ever say, Poirot asked softly, that he was afraid of someone? Clara was silent for a long moment. Yes, she said finally. But he never gave a name. Only this. If what they find out comes back here, Hymir won't just lose money. It will lose its reputation. Poirot inclined his head. Merci. That is all. For now. Outside on the hill path, Reeves blew out a long breath. Well, she was something. Indeed, Poirot said. You think she's involved? Poirot looked back at the house. I think, Constable, that 3 people in that house, Clara, her father, and Edward, had motive. At least one had opportunity. And one has lost a button. He glanced toward the river below, where the cracked Moonlight Bridge cut a pale silhouette against the water. The murder beneath the bridge, he murmured, is not simply about love gone wrong or money gone missing. It is about faces, the public face and the private one. And our task is to find where they no longer match. Reeves frowned. What now, sir? Poirot smiled slightly. Now, my friend, we speak to the one person who found the body. And we listen again. This time, not just to what he says, but to what he chooses not to say. He turned back toward the village, for in this case, it is not only the moonlight that is cracked. It is the stories as well. Chapter 4. The unspoken fear of the Witness-Heimer village looked different at dawn. The cracked Moonlight Bridge glistened faintly with dew, and the streets carried the quiet hum of a place waking to gossip long before chores. News of Leonard Harcourt's death had already spread. Curtains twitched. Doors lingered half open. Eyes followed Poirot and Constable Reeves as they made their way back to the mill house near the river. You really think the boy hid something? Reeves asked, half whisper, half dread. Poirot clasped his hands behind his back. My friend, when fear enters a story, truth leaves by the window. The young man Thomas, he fears someone. That means he knows more than he said. Reeves exhaled. He just looked scared. Poirot nodded. Yes, but not scared of us. Scared of someone else seeing him talk. They reached the mill house, a small, weather-beaten building, leaning like a tired elder beside the river stream. Water wheels groaned softly with the current. Thomas Braywood sat outside on an overturned bucket, a blanket still wrapped around him. He looked worse than the night before, paler, jumpier, eyes darting at every sound. When he saw Poirot, his shoulders stiffened. Sir, I told you everything I know. Poirot sat beside him, surprisingly gentle. Non, Mon Garkin. You told me everything you were comfortable telling. That is different. Thomas swallowed hard. I didn't lie. Perhaps not, Poirot said softly. But omission is also a lie of a different color. Thomas's throat bobbed. Poirot leaned closer, listened carefully. I do not accuse you. I do not suspect you. But you were there, and you saw something. Maybe not clearly. Maybe only for a moment. But it frightened you. Why? Thomas's lips parted, closed again. His fingers trembled around the blanket fringe. Reeves stepped forward. Thomas, nobody's blaming you. But a man is dead. The sooner we know what you saw, the safer the village becomes. Thomas stared at the ground. I didn't see a face, he whispered. Just a shape. Poirot nodded patiently. Yes, yes. A tall man, wearing a coat, running. Thomas shook his head suddenly. Not running, limping. Poirot's eyes sharpened instantly. Limping? Thomas nodded quickly. Yes. His left leg. He dragged it a little. He moved fast, but it wasn't normal running. Reeves blinked. Poirot, you said the footprints looked heavier on the left side. Poirot's mustaches lifted. Exactly. A man who favors one leg leaves a signature. Thomas squeezed the blanket harder. And there's something else, he whispered. Poirot's voice softened to almost a whisper. Go on, mon ami. Thomas's voice cracked in fear. When he passed, he said something. Poirot leaned in. What did he say? Thomas looked around fearfully. He said, It's done. Tell him I finished it. Reeves stiffened. Poirot's mind sharpened like a blade. Tell him I finished it. Not the words of a man escaping blindly. The words of a man completing a task. Poirot asked carefully, And did you see where he went after the woods? Thomas nodded. Double quotes, yes. He crossed toward the old quarry trail. Nobody goes there anymore. It's dangerous. Rocks slip. Poirot frowned. The quarry is abandoned, correct? Since the accident, Thomas whispered. Years ago. Poirot exchanged a slow, thoughtful look with Reeves. What accident? Poirot asked. Reeves answered. Edward Whitcomb's friend died there. Fell during a storm. The place was shut down after that. Poirot's brow lowered. A place tied to Edward Whitcomb. And now tied to a limping man running from a murder scene. He stood abruptly. Constable, we must find Edward Whitcomb at once. Thomas grabbed Poirot's sleeve suddenly. Please. Don't tell him I told you, he pleaded. Edward scares me. They all do in that house. They act like they own the whole village. Poirot placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Courage, mon Garcon. Truth protects those who speak it. But Poirot's eyes darkened as he turned away. Poirot's eyes darkened as he turned away. Because sometimes truth did not protect. Sometimes it only exposed danger. The man at the stables, Edward Whitcomb, was not inside Whitcomb House when they arrived. A servant informed them he was riding with the morning air. Poirot found that suspiciously poetic. They followed the gravel path to the stables behind the estate. There, a tall, handsome man with a rugged jawline was brushing down a chestnut horse. He moved with grace, but Poirot's eyes spotted the slight drag in his left leg immediately. He saw them approach and smiled. Well now, Edward Whitcomb said, leaning casually on the stable door, if it isn't the famous detective. Come to interrogate me so early? Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. Not interrogate, monsieur. Only to ask a few questions. Edward straightened and gave a half laugh. You're wondering about my leg, aren't you? Old injury. Fell at the quarry years ago. Most people in the village know it. Poirot stepped forward like a cat circling prey. And yet, monsieur, someone with a limp was seen fleeing the scene of Leonard Hawkert's murder. Edward's smile froze, only for a second. But Poirot saw it. That's absurd. I was here, riding. Poirot glanced at the horse. Then perhaps your groom can confirm the precise time you saddled your horse. Edward's jaw tensed. My staff don't keep logs for your benefit, Poirot. Poirot's smile sharpened. No, monsieur. But for a murder investigation, they will keep them for mine. Edward took a step closer, voice lowering. "You're walking a dangerous line, detective. My family has influence here. You start throwing accusations around, you'll find doors shut very quickly." Poirot met his glare. Murder shuts doors more permanently. "Monsieur." A tense silence settled. Edward scoffed suddenly. "Leonard Harcourt killed? I suppose someone finally got fed up with him. Can't imagine why you're looking at me." Poirot raised one eyebrow. "Oh, you two were once close friends." Edward shrugged carelessly. "We drifted. He made choices I didn't agree with. That's not murder." Poirot stepped even closer. "And a silver button torn from your riding coat, does that suggest mere drifting?" Edward's eyes flickered so small a reaction. But Poirot caught it like a spark in darkness. "That button has nothing to do with me." Edward snapped. Poirot nodded slowly. "As you say." But his eyes said otherwise. Poirot's conclusion of the morning, as Edward marched back toward the house, Reeves mumbled, "You think he did it?" Poirot did not answer immediately. He watched Edward disappear behind the stable doors. Finally, he spoke. "Constable, the man has motive, secrecy, temper, and a limp that matches the witness's tale. But—" Reeves asked. Poirot adjusted his hat. "But Edward Whitcomb is not a fool. He is arrogant, yes, but not careless. The man who fled last night was frightened, desperate, and Edward Whitcomb does not run from anything." Reeves blinked. "Then who did Thomas see?" Poirot looked toward the abandoned quarry trail in the distance. "A man with a limp, yes. But perhaps not the only one in this village." He turned sharply. "We go to the quarry next." And beneath his calm voice lay something Reeves felt in his spine. Poirot was closing in not on the murderer, but on the truth the murderer feared most. Chapter 5. Secrets Buried in the Quarry. Thus the path to the abandoned Highmere quarry wound along the river like a forgotten scar, half overgrown with weeds, half swallowed by old stone walls left to crumble. Even in daylight it felt haunted, as if the earth remembered the tragedy that once closed its gates. To Poirot, spaces that held the echoes of past death often held clues to new ones. A cold breeze stirred up fine white dust from the quarry floor, carrying it across the valley like mist. Constable Reeves shivered. "I don't like this place, sir." "Never have." Poirot raised a brow. "A detective does not need to like a place, only to observe what it hides." They approached the rusted gate. A chain hung across it, loosely locked. "Strange," Reeves muttered. "No one's supposed to go inside." "Gates meant to be fully secured." Poirot tapped the chain with his cane. "It was unlocked recently. Observe the metal. The scrape marks are fresh. No rust inside." Reeves swallowed. "Someone's been coming here." Poirot nodded, and perhaps not just last night. Inside the quarry, they stepped through the entrance. The quarry opened before them like a giant bowl carved from pale stone. Jagged cliffs surrounded it on 3 sides, with a path leading down to the center where machinery once stood, now broken, rusted, abandoned. Poirot's eyes scanned the ground. "Footprints," he murmured. Reeves crouched. "I see them too, one set, dragging slightly." Poirot nodded. exactly like the witness described. The limping man came here. They followed the tracks carefully down the sloping path. The quarry floor was quiet except for the soft whistle of wind. In the stillness, Poirot paused suddenly. "There," he said, "a boot print, deeper than the rest." "He stopped here," Poirot said, kneeling. "Perhaps to listen, perhaps to hide something." Reeves scanned the area. "But there's nothing around." Poirot pointed his cane toward the cliff wall. "Au contraire, mon ami. There is something." A faint black smear marked the stone, a soot-like dust rubbed onto the surface, but not quarry dust. "Coal residue?" Reeves suggested. Poirot shook his head. "No. Something burned recently." "A match? A lantern wick?" He lifted his gaze upward, and someone climbed the cliff. Reeves gasped. "Climbed? But who would climb this?" "It's dangerous." "Dangerous men do dangerous things," Poirot replied. He spotted a ledge, 3 meters up, where stones were disturbed. Something glittered weakly near its edge. Poirot frowned. "A shard of metal?" "No, a cufflink." With delicate precision, he used his cane to pull it free. It was silver, engraved with an ornate letter. Reeves stiffened. "Edward Whitcomb?" Poirot did not answer immediately. He examined the cufflink in the sun. "It is similar to Edward's style, but not identical." He pointed to the back hinge. "This one has been repaired. See the solder mark." Edward Whitcomb would not wear something imperfect. Reeves blinked. "Meaning?" "Meaning," Poirot said. "This belongs to someone who imitates Edward's style. Without his money." Reeves's eyes widened. "His cousin?" "The servants? Someone copying him?" Poirot pocketed the cufflink. "There are men in this village," he said quietly, "who want to look like they belong in Whitcomb House. That is motive." The cliffside echo. They followed the tracks deeper into the quarry. The walls rose higher, and the floor became uneven. Old timber beams lay rotting, tools rusted into the ground. Poirot stopped again. "There," he whispered, a fresh scrape along the cliffskin or fabric dragged against stone. Then, on the ground, a torn scrap of cloth. He lifted it. Dark gray. Fine weave. Expensive. Reeves looked alarmed. "Is that Edward's?" Poirot shook his head. "No, Edward wore navy yesterday. This is not from his coat. But someone who wants to appear important wears gray wool of this style." Reeves frowned. "Like who?" Poirot's eyes glimmered. "That, constable, is what we must discover." He held the cloth up to the light. A faint scent rose from it, sharp, chemical, unusual. Poirot stiffened. "Paint thinner," he whispered. "A strong one. A type used by artists." Reeves blinked. "Artists? There's only one in Highmere I know of, Nolan Gray, the recluse. Lives in that old railway house near the moors." Poirot nodded slowly. "And Nolan Gray has a limp, does he not?" Reeves's jaw dropped. "Sir." "Yes, he walks with a cane from an old injury." "But surely," Poirot held up a hand, "we do not jump to conclusions. But a man who limps, a man who wears gray wool, a man who uses strong paint thinners, and a man who lives far from prying eyes. He is worthy of a visit." Reeves nodded shakily. But why would an artist kill a banker? Poirot smiled sadly. Money, Constable, is merely a surface motive. Underneath it lie pride, jealousy, debt, betrayal, and sometimes love. He turned toward the quarry exit. But before we visit our artist, there is one more thing to examine. The hidden hollow. Poirot walked toward a small hollow between two boulders, partially hidden by weeds. How did you see that? Reeves whispered. Nothing escapes Hercule Poirot, he said lightly, though his voice carried tension. Inside the hollow lay lantern wick footprints circling the stone sand, a crumpled piece of paper. Poirot picked it up, a torn letter. He smoothed it gently. The surviving words read, "Meet at the bridge. Midnight, not safe. If he finds out." Reeves swallowed. A secret midnight meeting? Between who? Poirot folded the paper carefully. That is what we must learn. But one thing is now certain. Leonard Harcourt came to the bridge not to walk alone, but to meet someone who lied. He stood slowly, looking across the quarry, and someone else who was not invited followed. The wind swept through the quarry again, hissing as it passed through cracks in the stone. Poirot gazed upward, toward the Hymir horizon. Murder, he murmured, is rarely a single act. It is a chain, and we have found the next link. Poirot and Reeves began the climb back toward the village, their next destination, the house of Nolan Gray. The limping artist, the man who hides behind shadows and thinner fumes, and, perhaps, the man who knows why Harcourt screamed beneath the bridge. Rough but commanding. You come to disturb my morning. Make it worth the trouble. Poirot bowed slightly. I will endeavor to, milord. Reeves stood respectfully back as Poirot stepped closer. I come about Leonard Harcourt, Poirot began. Whitcomb's jaw moved just once, like a man swallowing something bitter. I've been informed. Unfortunate. A waste of a once promising man. You knew him well? Poirot asked. I knew his type, Whitcomb said. Ambitious, clever. Too clever for their own good. He thought numbers could shield him from consequence. Poirot's eyes narrowed slightly. You invested with him. Whitcomb gave the faintest smile. I invest with many men. Some succeed. Some fail. Leonard made both possibilities. Entertaining. Poirot's hand brushed his pocket where the torn letter lay. Did he also make blackmail entertaining, milord? The room seemed to chill. Whitcomb's gaze did not leave Poirot's. You are bold, he said quietly. Most men in this village choose their words with more care. Poirot did not blink. Most men in this village are not investigating a murder linked to a closed quarry. Missing funds and a bridge you own. A vein pulsed once in Whitcomb's temple. What exactly are you implying? He asked. I imply nothing, Poirot said mildly. I ask, where were you last night at 10:30? Here, Whitcomb answered. In this room. I do not stroll under bridges in the dark, Monsieur Poirot. My bones are not sentimental enough. Can this be confirmed? Poirot asked. My daughter. My nephew. My staff. Poirot nodded. Convenient. Much like Mademoiselle Clara's account. A flicker passed through Whitcomb's eyes. You spoke to her. I did. And what lies did she tell you? Poirot tilted his head. Does she often lie? Whitcomb's fingers tightened briefly on the chair arm. She sees the world through feeling, he said dismissively. Feeling distorts truth. I prefer numbers. They do not. Unless someone asks them to, Poirot said softly. Whitcomb's gaze sharpened. What are you really after, Poirot? Poirot took a few careful steps, as if inspecting the portraits on the wall. I am after the answer to a question, my lord. A simple one. Who stood to lose most if Leonard Harcourt decided to confess his role in the movement of certain creative funds? His eyes flicked back to Whitcomb. Because it was not Leonard alone who benefited none? Whitcomb's silence spoke volumes. Poirot continued. He came to Hymir to speak to someone. To put something right, he said. He commissioned paintings of the bridge from Nolan Gray. He went to the quarry. He met your daughter on the road. He may have met your nephew. But the secrets he carried, my lord, they reached higher than that. He took one more step forward. They reached you. Reeves held his breath. Whitcomb's knuckles whitened on the chair. You think an old man with a failing leg could drag a groan, banker under a bridge and strangle him? He asked. Poirot's reply was gentle and lethal. I think an old man with a failing leg could order it done. A long, thin silence followed. Finally, Whitcomb laughed. It was not a pleasant sound. You are not entirely wrong, he said, but not in the way you imagine. His eyes glinted. Do you know what ruins men of my standing, Monsieur Poirot? It is not theft. It is not even murder. It is scandal. Leonard had enough information to create a scandal. One that would not just cost me money, but legacy. And so, Poirot asked quietly. And so, Whitcomb said, I told my nephew to make sure he left this village. I told him to pay the man off, frighten him a little, remind him of his place, not to kill him. I do not order corpses under bridges, but I do demand loyalty. Poirot's eyes chilled. Edward went to meet him. Yes, Whitcomb said. And if Leonard is dead, then either Edward lost his temper, or someone else intervened. Who else knew? Poirot asked. Whitcomb's gaze drifted toward the window, where the bridge was a pale arc against the river. Anyone Harcourt spoke to, he said. And that is the problem with guilt, Monsieur Poirot. It makes people confessional. He looked back at Poirot. Find my nephew. If he killed Leonard, he will not have hidden it well. If he did not, then you will discover who else wanted our house to crack. Your house is already cracked, my lord, Poirot said softly. Whether you see it or not. He turned to leave. And when the final stone falls, he added, it may not be the bridge that breaks, but your name. Chapter 8. The threads in the ledger back at the Hymir Inn. Poirot sat at the small table once more. The items from his pockets lined up like suspects themselves, the silver Whitcomb button, the repaired cufflink with the letter E, the leather glove smelling faintly of paint thinner, the torn fragment of a letter. Constable Reeves hovered nearby, anxious. Sir, "Edward's not in the house," he said. "We checked. Stable hand says he rode out at dawn and hasn't come back." "Of course he has not," Poirot murmured. "The guilty rarely enjoy being present during inquiries about themselves." He unfolded the torn letter again, smoothing it gently. "Meet at the bridge. Midnight, not safe. If he finds out." Written by Harcourt? Reeves guessed. Poirot shook his head. No, the hand is different. More looping. Less disciplined. This is a woman's handwriting. Clara's? Reeves asked. Poirot considered. Possibly. Or Evelyn Harcourt's, or another yet unseen. But look here. He tapped a faint smudge at the edge. Ink blot. Blue-black. Expensive. This was not a casual note dashed off in haste. It was composed with care. Reeves frowned. Who would warn Leonard to meet at the bridge if things weren't safe? Poirot's eyes were distant. Someone who wanted him isolated. Someone who knew his fear. Perhaps someone who loved him once. Or still did. He set the letter aside and picked up the cufflink. Now this, he said, pretends to be Edward's. The E is clear. The style similar. But the repair tells us something different. The wearer valued it enough to mend it, not replace it. A man like Edward would simply throw it away. So, not Edward's? Reeves asked. No, Poirot said. Someone who wants people to think it is Edward's. Reeves blinked. Who would want that? Poirot smiled faintly. We return to the idea of masks, Constable. Some men wear the coat of another man's sins quite willingly if it gives them protection. He picked up the glove next, an artist's glove, he mused. But not Nolan Gray's. The size is larger, and the smell of thinner stronger, as if the wearer was careless around the solvents. He paused. Tell me, who else spends time around Nolan's work? Reeves thought. Well, a few villagers buy his paintings. Clara bought some years ago. The innkeeper has one. And I know Evelyn visited him once to commission a river sketch for her late mother. Poirot nodded slowly. And beyond buying? Anyone lingering there? Visiting more often than necessary? Reeves hesitated. There's talk, he said, lowering his voice, that Edward sometimes went up there. To support local art, he said. My guess is he wanted to borrow Nolan's eye for forgery. Signatures, mostly. Poirot's gaze sharpened. For documents? For guarantee notes, maybe. Loans. Quiet ones. Poirot tapped the glove. A man using Nolan's skill might also borrow his. Materials. Thinner. Gloves. Rags. And in doing so, might pick up traces without realizing. He sat back. Consider the pattern, Constable. Leonard Harcourt is entangled in clever financial games involving the Whitcomb estate. Edward wants the money and the prestige, but not the work. Lord Whitcomb wants the reputation, not the scandal. Nolan knows the quarry and the bridge. Clara feels betrayed. Evelyn is caught between loyalty and truth. Reeves sighed. That's a lot of motive. Yes, Poirot said. But only one pair of hands tightened around Leonard's throat. He closed his eyes briefly. Let us reconstruct the night. He spoke slowly, as though narrating a play. Leonard Harcourt comes to Hymir. He is under investigation already. He wants to shield himself, perhaps by sharing what he knows, perhaps by shifting blame. He meets with Nolan. He visits the quarry. He arranges to meet someone under the bridge around 10:30. Someone he believes will help him, or at least hear him. Poirot opened his eyes, but the note that lured him there was not written by a friend. Reeves swallowed. Who wrote it then? Poirot glanced toward the inn window, where the bridge glimmered faintly in the distance. A woman, I think, he said softly. Someone who knew his habits. Someone he would follow. He stood. We will not find the answer in objects alone. It is time, his eyes hardened, to bring everyone to one place. Reeves tensed. You mean, yes, Poirot said. Tell Lord Whitcomb, Miss Clara, Miss Evelyn, Nolan Gray, and when we find him, word Whitcomb. Hercule Poirot requests their presence under the Moonlight Bridge this evening. At the same hour Leonard Harcourt died. Reeves shivered. Below the bridge? Poirot's voice was quiet. If one wishes the truth to rise, Constable, one must sometimes drain the river of lies where they began. Chapter 9. Under the bridge at 10:30. Villagers watched from a distance that night. Lanterns glowed along the path. But the main pool of light gathered under the arch of the Moonlight Bridge, where the river flowed like black glass. The cracked stones overhead seemed to lean in, listening. Poirot stood in the center, hands folded neatly, coat immaculate despite the chill. Beside him, Constable Reeves hovered, notebook ready but unused dot around them. The summoned faces appeared one by one. Lord Whitcomb, brought in a carriage, supported by his cane. Clara, composed but tight-lipped. Evelyn Harcourt, eyes shadowed by worry. Nolan Gray, uneasy, shoulders hunched. Finally, escorted by an officer, Edward Whitcomb, face flushed, jaw clenched, riding coat slightly torn at the cuff. Is this a trial, Poirot? Edward snapped. Because if so, you've forgotten the judge. Poirot's voice was calm. Poirot's voice was calm. There is no judge here, monsieur. Only truth. And truth requires only one thing, that it be spoken aloud. He looked at all of them. Tonight we stand where Leonard Harcourt died. Around this place gather all those whose lives were tied to him. I will now tell you how he came to be here, and who walked away while he lay dead beneath the cracked moonlight. A tense silence fell. Poirot began. Leonard Harcourt, he said, was not merely a banker. He was an architect of shadows. He moved money. He disguised losses. He created clever structures that allowed those with much to risk little, and those with little to lose everything. His eyes flicked briefly at Lord Whitcomb. For years, he kept certain secrets for this family. Unwise investments, dangerous loans, borrowings against the quarry and lands that were already unstable. He concealed them well, too well. Whitcomb's face hardened, but he said nothing. Then, Poirot continued, the world changed. Investigations began. Leonard realized that if the truth surfaced, he would be left to carry all the blame. So he came here to the place where the money began to move most recklessly. He glanced at Edward. To you, Monsieur. Edward's eyes flared. I never. Poirot raised a hand. You wanted profit without responsibility. You leaned on Leonard to shift figures, to sign where your name should have appeared. You made deals in his shadow, and when he hesitated, you reminded him of the scandal that would destroy him and your family. Edward's fists clenched. You can't, but Leonard Harcourt, Poirot said, grew tired of being a shield. So he sought another path, confession. He went to Nolan Gray, who knew the quarry and the bridge, and commissioned paintings. Not for vanity, for symbolism. He wanted to place on canvas the very places where secrets lay. Nolan swallowed. He said. He needed to see it, he murmured. To face it. Poirot nodded. Double quotes. He visited your quarry, my lord. He planned to gather whatever documents he had hidden, and then he planned to talk. He turned to Evelyn, to you, mademoiselle. You were the one he trusted. You, his sister, who still believed there was some part of him worth saving. Evelyn's eyes filled. He sent me a letter, she whispered. Said he wanted to fix things. I told him to leave before it was too late. You also warned him, Poirot said gently, that if Whitcomb learned he was talking, he would be in danger. He held up the torn fragment. This letter is yours, Mademoiselle Evelyn. You wrote, meet at the bridge. Midnight, not safe. If he finds out, you meant to warn him. You did not know someone else would see the letter before he tore it up. He looked at Clara. You, Mademoiselle. Clara stiffened. I never meant. You found part of the letter in your brother's things when you visited him at the inn, Poirot said. You recognized your own handwriting. You thought he was about to ruin both your family and Leonard at once. So you confronted someone. He turned back to Edward. You went to Edward. You showed him the letter. You begged him to stop Leonard from speaking. You believed he would frighten him away, not kill him. But you knew Edward's temper. You knew his pride. You knew very well what might happen below this bridge. Clara's shoulders shook. I just wanted it to go away, she whispered. All of it. The debts, the lies. If Leonard left quietly, no one would be destroyed. But someone already was, Nolan said hoarsely. Men died at that quarry. For their profit. Poirot's gaze cut to Lord Whitcomb. You ordered Edward to arrange a meeting, he said. You wanted Leonard to understand the cost of disobedience. You underestimated what anger and fear can do. Poirot's voice lowered. Edward came here last night. He reached the bridge early. He waited in the shadows. When Leonard arrived, the words grew heated. Leonard threatened to expose everything, to hand over what he knew, to drag the Whitcomb name into the mud. Edward shouted, he was going to ruin us. All of us. You don't know what that means in a place like this. Poirot's stare did not soften. And so, he said, you grabbed him. You struggled. Your old quarry injury screamed in protest, but rage made you strong. You slammed him against the stones. You tore your cuff and lost a button. You squeezed until he could not scream again. Then you dragged him here, arranging his body like a fallen puppet beneath the bridge. The river murmured below as if in agreement. And then, Poirot continued, you ran. Away from the village. toward the one place you knew you could hide the last traces, the quarry you once ruled as your private domain. Thomas saw you limping past. He heard your words. Tell him I finished it, not to a messenger, but to yourself, to your pride. You believed you had finished your problem. Edward's face twisted. Poirot stepped closer, but you did not count on Nolan Gray walking near the tracks, on him seeing a second limping man and being blamed in whispers, on your glove catching a thorn, on your repaired cufflink falling on quarry stone, on Leonard's sister keeping part of her letter rather than destroying it. Poirot placed the silver button, the glove, the cufflink, and the torn letterpiece on a flat stone. These do not lie, he said simply. All eyes turned to Edward. His defiance crumbled first into rage, then into something weary and hollow. He would have destroyed us, he said, voice breaking. My uncle, Clara, Evelyn, everyone. You think I did this for myself? I did it for the family, for the name. Whitcomb stared at him, face carved from stone. You did it clumsily, the old man said. And you did it where everyone could see. Reeves stepped forward slowly. Cuffs in hand. Edward Whitcomb, he said hoarsely. I'm placing you under arrest for the murder of Leonard Harcourt. Clara turned away, shaking. Evelyn covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Nolan watched with a mixture of fear and grim satisfaction. Edward's gaze met Poirot's. You could have looked the other way, he said. You could have let it stay buried. Poirot's reply was quiet, absolute. Non, monsieur. Hercule Poirot does not walk away from truth, not even beneath a cracked moon. Chapter 1. Cracks and Reflections. Days later, the village of Highmere began to return to some semblance of normality. The gossip did not fade. Gossip never does. But the sharp edges dulled. Lanterns on the bridge were lit again. Children crossed it in daylight without glancing nervously at the water dot in the sitting room of the Highmere Inn. Poirot sat with a cup of chocolate instead of coffee, savoring its sweetness. The table before him was clear now. The clues had done their work and no longer needed to be displayed. Constable Reeves sat opposite, still looking as though part of him could not believe it was over. Edward's given a full statement, Reeves said. Confessed to the struggle, the rage, the panic. Said he never meant to kill him, only to shut him up. Poirot nodded. Confessions after the fact are rarely as noble as the speaker believes, but it will satisfy the law. Reeves exhaled. Lord Whitcomb won't walk away untouched either. The inquiry into the quarry, the hidden debts, the bank dealings, they're all coming back now. It might not be prison, but his name will carry its own sentence. Poirot finished softly. Reeves studied him. Do you ever tire of it, sir? Tire of what? Poirot asked, seeing how ugly things are underneath. Every time something looks grand, a big house, a strong bridge underneath it, there's rot, lies, cracks. Doesn't it ever weigh on you? Poirot's gaze drifted toward the window. The Moonlight Bridge was visible in the distance, its reflection broken on the slow-moving river. Sometimes, he said. But I am not an artist like Monsieur Nolan. I do not paint the cracks. I follow them to see where they begin. That is all. Evelyn Harcourt approached their table hesitantly. "May I?" she asked. Poirot rose politely. "Of course, mademoiselle. Sit." She sat, hands folded tightly. "I wanted to thank you," she said. "If you hadn't done what you did, Leonard's death would have been blamed on the wrong person, or left as an accident. That would have been—" She searched for the word. "Cruel." Poirot's expression softened. "Cruelty in truth is still better than comfort in lies, mademoiselle. Your brother made many wrong choices, but in the end he tried clumsily, too late to make one right. That is more than some can claim." She nodded, eyes shining. "And Clara?" Poirot asked gently. "She's gone to stay with relatives in Bath for a while," Evelyn said. "She blames herself for involving Edward, for not seeing what he was capable of." Poirot gave a small, sad smile. "Responsibility sits on many shoulders in this affair, but guilt belongs only to the hand that killed." He watched her stand, thank him once more, and leave. Thank him once more, and leave. A shadow fell across the doorway. Nolan Gray stood there, cap in his hand, as if unsure whether he belonged inside. "Come, monsieur," Poirot called. "Do not hover like a ghost." Nolan gave a humorless half-smile and stepped in. "I brought you something," he said, holding up a wrapped canvas. Poirot raised a brow. "For me?" Nolan shrugged, considerate. "Payment or closure." He set the canvas on a chair and pulled the cloth away. The painting showed the Moonlight Bridge at night. The cracked stones, the fractured moonlight, the broken reflection, but no body, no figures. Just the bridge and its echo in the water. Only in the reflection. The cracks were reversed where the bridge seemed fragile. Its reflection seemed whole. Poirot studied it with uncharacteristic quiet. "It is beautiful," he said at last. "And clever." Nolan shifted on his cane. "People will still come here," he said. "They'll ask what happened. Some will get the story right. Some won't. I thought maybe you should have the one thing that tells it honestly." Poirot inclined his head. "You have given more than a painting, monsieur. You have given a reminder." "Of what?" Nolan asked. "That truth is like reflection," Poirot said. "It may twist. It may crack. But somewhere in the right light, the whole picture still exists." Nolan considered that, then nodded slowly. "I still don't like the Whitcombs," he muttered. "Nor I," Poirot said lightly. "But I like even less what happened when they believed themselves untouchable." Reeves stood. "I'll walk you out," he told Nolan. They left, and the room fell quiet again. Poirot walked to the window and looked out at the bridge one last time. In daylight, with no scream, no body, no guilty footsteps running into the woods, it looked almost ordinary. But Poirot knew better. Places carried memory. Stones listened. Water remembered. He straightened his tie, smoothed his mustaches, and picked up the painting. Nolan had left time to leave Hymir, he thought. Another village. Another mystery would come. They always did. But beneath the cracked Moonlight Bridge, at least, order had been restored. The truth, messy, painful, imperfect, had surfaced at last. And for Hercule Poirot, that was enough.